The sun breaches the horizon line like a sudden gunshot. Light bleeds across the terracotta tiles of the balcony. I grip the stone railing with damp palms. Heat rises from the jungle floor below us. The air smells of orchids and diesel exhaust. Men carrying rifles patrol the perimeter fence constantly. I sip black coffee from a porcelain cup. The liquid burns my throat on the way down. I married Alejandro 3 years ago in secret. The world knows him as a ruthless phantom. Cartel leaders speak his name in hushed whispers. Law enforcement agencies classify him as an untouchable ghost. I know him as the primary target of my mission. My handler calls me Asset Delta 9. I wear the mask of a devoted cartel queen. Silk robes conceal the rapid beating of my heart. Diamonds rest heavy against my collarbone every morning. Every gemstone represents a life violently extinguished. I must maintain this fiction for one more day. The extraction team arrives at exactly midnight tonight. Survival demands absolute perfection in every single movement. I turn away from the sprawling jungle view. The master bedroom resembles a museum of stolen wealth. Persian rugs muffle my footsteps across the floor. Oil paintings observe me from the plastered walls. I walk toward the massive mahogany dressing table. I sit on the velvet stool and examine my face. The mirror reflects a woman I barely recognize. All her eyes hold secrets heavier than mountain stone. I apply crimson lipstick with a steady hand. The color reminds me of fresh crime scenes. Alejandro demands flawless beauty from his chosen wife. I give him the exact illusion he desires. I brush my dark hair until it gleams. A loaded pistol rests inside my top drawer. I do not touch the weapon right now. Security cameras watch the hallway outside our suite. I stand up and smooth the silk fabric. The day requires a performance of absolute loyalty. I open the heavy oak door and step out. The corridor stretches long and silent before me. Marble floors shine under crystal chandelier lighting. 2 guards stand at the end of the hall. They lower their heads as I approach them. They fear the woman who shares the monster's bed. I nod to them without offering a single smile. Power relies on distance and calculated coldness. I descend the grand staircase into the foyer. The smell of frying garlic drifts from the kitchen. Maria prepares breakfast for the estate staff every morning. I enter the dining room with measured steps. Alejandro sits at the head of the long table. He reviews a stack of financial documents intently. He wears a tailored suit woven from fine wool. He looks like a legitimate corporate executive today. He does not look like a mass murderer. The disconnect forms the core of his power. He rules a global empire of narcotics and blood. He looks up and smiles at my arrival. His dark eyes scan my face for any hesitation. I walk to him and kiss his cheek. His skin smells of expensive cologne and cigar smoke. He pulls me close by my waist. His grip feels possessive and unyielding against my ribs. He asks how I slept through the storm. I tell him the thunder did not wake me. The lie slips from my tongue like smooth oil. I actually spent the night memorizing security patrol routes. I sit in the chair to his right. Una maid pours fresh orange juice into my glass. Alejandro returns his attention to the financial reports. He taps a silver pen against the mahogany wood. The rhythm sounds like a ticking explosive device. He mentions a problem with the Port Authority. A shipment of cargo faces unexpected customs delays. I listen carefully to every detail he provides. The cargo contains 3 tons of processed product. He drops the name of a corrupt port official. I carve the name into my memory permanently. This information will secure his final conviction tomorrow. A shadow falls across the dining room entrance. Mateo steps into the room with heavy boots. Mateo serves as the chief enforcer for the syndicate. A jagged scar bisects his left cheekbone. He carries the stench of copper and sweat. He glares at me with barely concealed suspicion. Mateo never trusted the sudden arrival of a new wife. He believes I hold divided loyalties in my heart. He hands a sealed folder to Alejandro quickly. Alejandro tears the envelope open with sharp movements. He scans the document and his jaw clenches tight. The temperature in the room seems to drop instantly. He throws the paper onto the breakfast table. The cartel in Tijuana demands a larger territory share. Alejandro commands Mateo to prepare a strike team. The order signifies a death warrant for 50 men. Mateo nods once and pivots on his heel. He leaves the room to execute the bloody directive. So Alejandro rubs his temples with his fingertips. I place my hand over his knuckles softly. I offer hollow words of comfort to soothe him. I tell him his enemies lack his superior vision. He exhales and covers my hand with his own. He calls me the only piece in his chaotic world. The irony of his statement tastes like ash. I represent the dagger aimed directly at his spine. He finishes his coffee and stands up abruptly. He announces a meeting in the lower bunkers. The compound houses a network of subterranean tunnels. I know the blueprints of this fortress perfectly. The agency spent months mapping the architectural plans. He kisses my forehead and walks away swiftly. I watch his broad shoulders disappear down the hall. My window of opportunity opens right now. I leave the dining room and head upstairs. I must transmit the port official data immediately. I enter my private library on the second floor. Hundreds of leather books line the tall shelves. I lock the heavy door behind me securely. I retrieve a hollowed volume of classic poetry. The book conceals an encrypted satellite communicator. I power the small device on with my thumb. A green light blinks rapidly in the shadows. I type the corrupt official details into the interface. I include the port location and the shipment volume. I hit send and wait for the confirmation tone. The device vibrates twice in my palm. The agency acknowledges the receipt of critical intelligence. I power the unit down and hide it away. I slide the poetry book back into its slot. A sudden knock strikes the library door loudly. My heart slams against my ribcage like a hammer. I control my breathing and smooth my expression. I unlock the door and pull it open. Maria stands in the hallway holding a woven basket. She asks if I require fresh linens today. I tell her the current linens remain perfectly fine. I watch her walk away down the corridor. Paranoia threads itself through every hour of my existence. I cannot afford a single mistake today. The afternoon sun bakes the fortress in blinding heat. I walk out into the central courtyard garden. Fountains spray cool water into the dry air. Peacocks roam across the manicured green lawns. The beauty of this place serves as a camouflage. Men with assault weapons stand in the perimeter shadows. I sit on a stone bench beneath a palm tree. I review the extraction plan in my mind. At midnight, the strike team will disable the power. Helicopters will descend upon the main courtyard simultaneously. I must reach the southern gate before the breach. Alejandro will attempt to secure the underground bunker. If he reaches the tunnels, the operation fails completely. I must prevent his escape at all costs. I hear footsteps crushing the gravel path nearby. I turn and see Mateo approaching my position. His dark eyes lock onto mine like a predator. He stops 3 feet away from the stone bench. He does not offer a respectful greeting this time. He asks what I do alone in the garden. I tell him I enjoy the afternoon sunshine. He steps closer and invades my personal space. He says he checked the security logs this morning. He noticed an encrypted signal originating from the estate. The frequency bounced off a government satellite array. Cold dread floods my veins like ice water. I maintain direct eye contact without blinking once. I ask him what he implies with this information. He accuses me of harboring dangerous secrets inside. I stand up and face him with manufactured outrage. I remind him of my position in this hierarchy. I threaten to tell Alejandro about his blatant disrespect. Mateo smiles a terrible and crooked smile. He says Alejandro will soon realize the truth himself. Mateo promises to watch my every move tonight. He turns around and walks back toward the house. The encounter leaves a metallic taste in my mouth. The timeline of the mission just accelerated drastically. I return to the master suite to prepare myself. The sun dips below the western mountain range. Shadows stretch long and dark across the bedroom floor. I open the hidden compartment in my drawer. I retrieve the compact pistol and check the magazine. 15 rounds of hollow point ammunition sit ready. I chamber a round with a sharp metallic click. I secure the weapon inside a specialized thigh holster. I choose a long black evening gown for dinner. The heavy fabric conceals the shape of the gun. I secure my hair with ivory pins. I apply a darker shade of lipstick tonight. I stare at the mirror and embrace the warrior. The Cartel Queen persona falls away into dust. Only the federal agent remains in the reflection. I strap a ceramic knife to my left ankle. I walk out of the room with silent purpose, as the evening meal will serve as the final act. I descend the stairs as the clock strikes 8. The dining room table features a lavish feast tonight. Roasted meats and exotic fruits fill silver platters. Alejandro sits at the head with a dark expression. Mateo stands quietly in the corner of the room. 4 cartel lieutenants occupy the remaining heavy chairs. I take my seat beside my dangerous husband. The tension in the air feels thick enough to cut. Alejandro pours dark red wine into his crystal glass. He does not offer a toast to the table. He stares at the crimson liquid for a long moment. He announces that a traitor breathes among us tonight. The lieutenants shift uncomfortably in their seats. Silence suffocates the room like a heavy blanket. Alejandro explains the encrypted signal discovered by Mateo. He says someone transmitted data to the federal police. He pulls a silver revolver from his suit jacket. He places the weapon on the white tablecloth. The heavy metal clunks against the polished wood. My pulse roars loudly in my own ears. Alejandro looks directly at a lieutenant named Carlos. Carlos controls the smuggling routes through the northern desert. Alejandro accuses Carlos of selling information to the state. Carlos stands up and denies the charge frantically. He swears absolute loyalty to the syndicate and Alejandro. Sweat shines on the forehead of the terrified man, and Alejandro does not listen to the desperate pleas. He raises the revolver and fires a single shot. The blast deafens everyone inside the dining room. Carlos falls backward and crashes onto the floor. Blood pools rapidly across the expensive Persian rug. The smell of gunpowder and copper fills the space. The other lieutenants freeze in absolute terrified shock. Alejandro places the smoking gun back on the table. He calmly instructs Mateo to remove the dead body. I stare at the corpse and control my facial muscles. I force myself to show zero empathy or fear. I nod slightly, as if agreeing with the execution. Alejandro turns his dark eyes toward my face. He asks if the sudden violence disturbed my appetite. I tell him, traitors deserve no mercy from us. He smiles and lifts his wineglass to his lips. He drinks the red wine like a victorious king. The clock on the wall ticks toward midnight slowly. We finish the meal in complete and awful silence. The maids clear the plates with trembling hands. Alejandro invites me to the study for a drink. We leave the dining room and walk down the hall. The study features heavy oak panels and leather chairs. He pours 2 glasses of aged dark rum. He hands me a glass and gestures to a chair. I sit down and cross my legs carefully. The thigh holster rests securely against my skin. He paces the floor like a caged panther. He talks about expanding his empire into Europe soon. Chatez, I listen to a dead man detail his future plans. The antique clock chimes the quarter hour softly. 15 minutes remain until the strike team breaches. Alejandro stops pacing and looks out the window. He says he feels a strange shift in the wind. His survival instincts border on the supernatural sometimes. He walks over to a heavy iron safe. He spins the dial with practiced and rapid movements. He opens the heavy door and removes a briefcase. The case contains millions in untraceable bearer bonds. He tells me we must leave the compound tonight. He claims Mateo found more evidence of federal surveillance. He orders me to pack a single small bag immediately. Panic flares bright and hot inside my chest. If we leave now, the entire operation crumbles. I stand up and walk toward him slowly. I tell him running away shows weakness to his enemies. I place my hand on his broad chest. I try to anchor him to this specific room. He grabs my wrist with sudden, brutal force. His eyes narrow into dark and dangerous slits. He asks why I want to remain inside a trap. He notes my unusual lack of fear tonight. He pulls me closer until our faces almost touch. He whispers that Matteo suspected me from the beginning. I realize the execution of Carlos served as a test. He wanted to watch my reaction to sudden death. He drops my wrist and steps back slowly. He reaches for the pistol holstered at his hip. The illusion shatters into a million jagged pieces. I do not wait for him to draw his weapon. I drop to one knee and reach through the silk slit. My fingers grip the handle of my hidden pistol. I draw the weapon and aim it at his chest. I command him to freeze and raise his hands. The Cartel King stares at me in pure disbelief. The shock quickly morphs into boiling murderous rage. He laughs a cold and hollow sound. He asks if I truly believe I can arrest him. He reminds me of the 50 guards outside this door. I tell him the guards will die in 5 minutes. He lunges toward me with terrifying speed and power. I fire one round into his right shoulder. The impact spins him backward into the mahogany desk. He grunts in pain and clutches his bleeding arm. The gunshot echoes loudly through the silent house. Shouts erupt from the hallway outside the study. Bootsteps pound heavily against the marble floors. I keep my weapon trained on his center mass. The heavy oak door splinters under a massive kick. Matteo charges into the room with an assault rifle. I pivot and fire 2 rounds into his chest. Matteo collapses onto the rug without making a sound. Alejandro uses the distraction to trigger a hidden switch. A section of the bookshelf slides open instantly. He dives into the dark passage behind the wall. The secret door begins to close behind him automatically. I sprint across the room and slide through the gap. The bookshelf seals shut and plunges us into darkness. Emergency red lights flicker on along the tunnel ceiling. The air smells of damp earth and stale concrete. I hear Alejandro running heavily down the corridor ahead. This tunnel leads directly to the subterranean garage. I chase after him with my weapon raised. Blood drips from his shoulder and marks the floor. I track the crimson drops under the red light. The sound of distant explosions shakes the ceiling dust. The strike team just initiated the perimeter breach. Black Hawk helicopters roar above the estate grounds violently. I push my legs harder and close the distance. Alejandro stumbles against a concrete support pillar. He turns around and fires his pistol blindly. A bullet sparks against the wall near my head. I drop to the ground and return fire twice. One bullet strikes his knee and shatters the bone. He screams and falls hard onto the concrete floor. I rise and approach him with cautious steps. He drops his empty weapon and clutches his ruined leg. I kick his pistol away into the shadows. I stand over the most feared man in the world. He looks up at me with hatred and agony. He asks who I really work for in the end. I tell him my true name and my agency rank. I tell him the empire ends in this tunnel tonight. He spits blood onto the toe of my shoe. He promises his cartel will hunt me forever. I tell him his cartel ceases to exist by morning. The sound of heavy boots echoes down the passage. Tactical lights blind us from the far end. A team of federal operators surrounds us with rifles. The team leader confirms the target is secure. A medic kneels to stabilize the bleeding wounds. 2 operators pull Alejandro up with zip-tied wrists. They drag him toward the awaiting extraction vehicles. The commander nods to me with profound respect. He says the extraction helicopter waits for my boarding. I holster my weapon and walk back up the tunnel. The estate burns violently against the night sky. Smoke billows from the shattered windows of the mansion. Sirens wail in the distance like mourning ghosts. I step onto the extraction chopper and strap in. The machine lifts off and banks away from the fire. I look down at the ruins of my false life. The adrenaline fades and leaves me feeling hollow. I successfully completed the most dangerous mission on Earth. But I brought down the phantom of the cartel world. I stare at my hands under the cabin lights. The diamond ring still shines on my left finger. I slide the ring off and drop it on the floor. The metal rolls away into the dark corner. I close my eyes and try to steady my breathing. The helicopter flies through the dense mountain clouds. I survived the fortress of the devil himself. I lived alongside a monster and matched his cruelty. The line between justice and vengeance blurs completely. I carry the ghosts of this place inside my mind. Operation Endgame achieved total tactical victory tonight. The world will sleep safer because of my deception. I wonder if I will ever sleep soundly again. The scent of gunpowder lingers on my skin permanently. I trade one prison for the cage of my memories. The darkness outside the window mirrors my internal state. I remain Asset Delta 9 until the very end. The mission consumes the soul and leaves nothing behind. I watch the sun rise over a different horizon. The light brings zero comfort to my tired eyes. The war never ends for people like us.